So I'm like, I need to figure that when that's going to be. So that'll be the first Sunday of December.
Welcome to the City of Franklin City Council meeting. It's time to call to order. It is November the 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Ms. Rhodes, roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Austin?
Here.
Mr. Buchan? Ms. Price?
Here.
Ms. McGinnis?
Here.
Ms. Conley? Mr. Pine?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Sir, we have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brian Reese, prayer and pledge, please.
All right, invite you to join me. Our Father, we come to you this evening, and we just thank you again for an opportunity to be in this hall and for this council to take upon themselves the matters of this city. And I pray they would do it well and with guidance and discernment and wisdom from you. And Lord, tonight, as we consider this week, as we commemorate Veterans Day here later, we do want to thank you for those who have sacrificially served our country, whether it's in combat or support services or reserves, just all the men and women that have served our nation and our veterans. We just thank you for them and their examples set for us for what it looks like to really serve. Your word tells us over and over to be strong and courageous, and they have been an example of that to us, and we thank you for them. Be with this meeting this evening, we ask in your name. Amen. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Okay, thank you. Is there any announcements, presentations, or public comment that is not addressed on the agenda? If someone has something, please come to the mic now. I know, Mary, this is your chance. If you want to say something, now's the time. You need to go up here. You don't have to. You can sit there if you want. And no, you could sit there and be quiet if you want, but if you want to speak, you need to go up there. I'm right there with you. Didn't we go to school together?
Thank you. My name's Mary Mitchell. I live at the Franklin Cove out by 65. The mayor and I had a discussion. Yes, I'm aware they got the grant for.
Can you say what that grant's for? I'm not sure that
It's
everybody up here.
supposed to be for remodeling and updating. They got it during the summer. They have yet to do anything. All they do, Wallach, is all they've been doing is putting us old people through stress, getting sick. Our breathing is getting worse because of the mold situation. We had the health department come in 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'm not sure. But they haven't done anything to help us. They gave them the report. Nothing's been done. One lady has her apartment, the carpet's dry rotted where it has leaked through the doors. I have to tape up my back door every winter to keep it halfway warm. I can't understand why there's nothing been done. We had a big meeting. The Daily Journal was there, took notes, and still, all they're doing now is evicting us for little or no reason whatsoever. I'm not a real easy person to get along, but I don't like to be lied to. And they're just, for them to have a grant.
Okay, Mary, let me just interject here a little bit. So you're not being lied to. They actually applied for this grant 2 years ago.
Okay.
They did get the grant. I'm not sure how much that is, Krista, right off the top of her head. However, they are going to remodel it. Things don't happen overnight. And they're waiting on a...
And I double checked because they've come to the Plan Commission. Was it Plan Commission, Joanna, or BZA? I can't remember. It was a BZA. They've come to the Plan Commission. The grant is not money from us, just for council's purposes. It's a grant they apply for, state or feds? Thank you, thank you. And so it's not city money, but it's state money. They came, the permits have been filed. What they are waiting on is the release from the state of Indiana, and we don't have the authority to order that release done. So until the state of Indiana signs off on it, I mean, they've done what we need here, we've got the permits on file, we can't release those.
And we
As a-
could, ma'am, give you a phone number and an email address for the Indiana Housing Authority that you can reach out to them, because we really have no say outside of, we would like to
Well,
see
this
it
is the
completely
best
remodeled.
news we've heard,
Well,
period.
it's-
Because
well-
all they've done is, oh, we're going to start during the winter, box some of your stuff up. We have. Now we're getting wrote up for having a not trashy apartment, boxes and stuff like that sitting around.
Okay,
'Cause they're
well,
filled with our
we get the
stuff.
gist of it, and like I said, if you come get with Krista or Dana tomorrow, and we'll get you some addresses to take care of that. But
Okay,
your
I
voice has been
appreciate
heard.
that. Sorry to bother you guys.
No, it's not a
about-
bother, ma'am.
Bob,
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you telling us.
Okay, is there any other announcements, presentations, or public comment? Okay, hearing none, we will go on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda minutes for October 17th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Ann. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, there isn't any old business. We'll go into new business.
Move to read new business by title only.
Second.
Second by Josh. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 1, US 31 project proposal, traffic flow examples, Trent Newport Crossroads Engineering.
Good evening. Just wanted to give an update on the US 31 project. And actually, I did the same thing at the RDC meeting recently, so some of this may be regurgitated for some of you who were there. We had a public hearing on August 1st. This was held at the middle school, and that public hearing followed federal process, which is what NDOT does with all of their projects because they involve federal money. The unfortunate thing about that federal process is it's a very stiff process for the public. What happens is the public are able to come up and voice their concerns or questions or comments on record, and then we are not allowed to answer those at that meeting. We take those under advisement. We publish in written form those responses. And for the most part, all through my career, what I've seen is that frustrates the heck out of the public. And so that was no different in this one. And this project has some new features that a lot of people, struggle to understand. And I think there was also a lot of misinterpretation of those, and we're not able to get up and kind of talk about those after the fact. There were a few people that stayed after we shut down the public hearing that stayed afterwards, and we were able to talk to them, and some of those were ones that had some major concerns, were pretty fired up, and we were able to kind of get them calmed down and talk through the process and try to show that we were going to be there to address those concerns. Most of the concerns, besides just the nature of the project, had to do with access, whether or not emergency vehicles were able to get up and down effectively in the corridor when it's done, individual access on parcels, whether or not it was being designed for peak traffic volumes, how the signals are supposed to operate, and so forth. So what we're trying to do on the heels of that is to kind of come out into some of these meetings and get more education out about not only what the project's about, but also how we are addressing some of those concerns. And we have already effectively addressed a lot of those. We had a couple parcels who came to us at that meeting and said, what you're doing to us, taking away a drive, is really causing us some issues with access because of the way we come around the parcel and the way we access and the way we load things with vehicles and so forth. And so we went back and looked at that. We agreed with them. We took that back to NDOT, and we got approved to add those accesses back in. We've worked with the school, who gave us a lot more information on bus counts and traffics at both the middle school and also at Brannigan. We've lengthened some turn lanes due to that platooning of some of the buses coming and going at certain times. We added, I think, 2 different signals, maybe 3 throughout the project, based on some counts that were given to us at that meeting and after the meeting for, say, for instance, Turning Point Church at the north end. We've added a couple signals there for those U-turns. So we definitely have done some changes to the project through that process, which is exactly what it's designed for. And we're continuing to take comments and address those. But as you probably heard me say before, the project is a major change of the way traffic will flow through the area. And this is, we are using reduced conflict intersections of many different varieties, but basically they minimize the potential for high severity crash types such as head-on and angle. And then when they are implemented at multiple intersections along a corridor like this project, the efficient 2-phase signal operation of the U-turn can also reduce delays, improve travel times through, and create more crossing opportunities for peds and bicyclists. And the PED enhancements to this project are significant with paths and those access points at more intersection points. The Federal Highway has statistics showing a 25 to 65% reduction in fatal and injury crashes at signalized RCIs, or the reduced conflict intersections, over traditional. And that is the main focus of this project, is that safety realization. From 2014 to 2016 on US 31 in this corridor, there were 700 crashes, 156 of those with, bad injuries. And so it is reportedly from NDOT, when 31 was redone with interchanges in Carmel, that was a bad accident area. We always heard about accidents at those major intersections. And when that got developed to be an interchange style, this became the most accident-prone state highway remaining in the state in a corridor fashion. We obviously don't have the room to put interchanges. We don't have the room to do what was done in that Carmel area, or we would be tearing up everything. And so this is, and we looked at roundabouts for this corridor as well. Roundabouts is something that when we brought and talked about it, everybody was the same kind of reaction. It's the end of the world and we're not going to like them and we don't understand why we're doing them. But I think we've come a long ways in people understanding the benefits of roundabouts now here in Franklin and everywhere in Indiana. We did look at roundabouts, but roundabouts actually make this corridor fail because the north-south traffic is so much heavier than east-west that you don't get the gaps to get in if you're the east-west traffic, and so it just doesn't work. But this has been done through our traffic studies. We've consulted with another national consulting firm to help support that expertise. And it is these signals all talk to each other throughout the entire corridor. As far as emergency vehicles, they're going to be able to get through in the areas where we have fire stations, which there's 2 places on the corridor that they have direct access to 31 there. Even though the public won't be able to turn left at those intersections, the fire engines or any emergency vehicles will be able to. In those areas. And the other thing I think that was misconceived is that, we're separating or shutting off from east-west traffic. And we actually have a lot of these intersections are actually have access east-west and have left turns off of 31. So direct left turns are allowed at South Main Street. And these are direct left turns from 31 onto the Franklin Street, right? Not from that street onto 31. That's where you use the RCIs. But from 31, turning onto, you can turn left onto South Main Street, Nineveh Road, Franklin Lakes Boulevard, which is South Street also, Hospital Road, King Street, Mallory, North Main, Westview, Industrial Drive, Earlywood Drive, Christian Boulevard and Oakville Boulevard. And through traffic is allowed at Commerce and at Jefferson Street, actual through traffic coming through the intersection. So I think there's, I think in the beginning, everybody thought, well, it's all restrictions everywhere, and that's not the case. But what we tried to do is model this so that it could still be safer and be efficient. But, some of those movements, if we cut them off, it actually overloads the system. If you take all those left turns out and make everybody use the U-turns, then it overloads the U-turn system. And so that's where we had to find that balance. So I just want to walk through a few of these major intersections just so you can kind of see, and they all have different terms. I'm not going to bore you with what those are, but they all look a little different. So this one is South Main Street, and you can kind of see those white areas are raised concrete. So you have a funneled area. So for instance, if you're heading south on South Main Street and you're going to turn left, you have signals to do that, but then you basically have a merge lane, as you can see, where you get up to speed and you merge into traffic. And then the next intersection up to the north, so these are just the U-turns at that intersection. So, there you go, Nineveh Road. So you can see there, pedestrian crossing in the middle. Those are all raised concretes to protect the pedestrians in that center area. And then, so you have left turns again allowed from 31 onto Nineveh. And those are your U-turns north and south of intersections there. So this is South Street, again, protected left turn lanes. But if, again, all these are the same. If you're coming from South Street and you want to turn left to go south on 31, you will turn north, go up to the next U-turn and use that signal. 75% of the U-turns on this corridor, I think it's actually 80% now, are signalized. So there are some that are not signalized, but those are out actually at the north end in the more rural areas. That's the creek. There's Hospital Road. It's already cut off now, so it will continue to be, but you can see the left turns. Left turn is allowed into Hospital Road there. It's signalized. And that's what we call a loon there, where you have a larger loon right there to turn if you're heading south and need to head back north.
Trent, can I stop you just for a second? Because we've been asked, all of us up here, about the pedestrian crossing at the creek. How's that going to work with the bridge?
Say it again.
How is the pedestrian crossing at the bridge going to work?
Yeah, those are sidewalk. You see where there's a line there? Those are wider sidewalks. The path is up against the road right there in both those areas, and that's a raised. That's a sidewalk with a raised curb. So think of Main Street, your bridge on South Main right here. Yeah. So it's adjacent to the road, but it's elevated and it's a wider walk to provide that area.
That path will still go underneath?
Yeah, we are not touching the path for the trail that it goes underneath, correct. And then there's Jefferson Street. So Jefferson Street is one that we did need to allow the left turn movement from eastbound coming in. As you see that right there, it's dashed on there. And that's because when we took that away and tried to put that onto the road, it failed. So we were not able to get rid of that left turn movement just because of the traffic volumes that we project and out for 20 years. So that is a left turn movement that will be allowed, but that will be the only one there.
So the right turn going south, excuse me, Trent, the right turn coming from, say, the hospital, coming to 31, you will be able to turn right into that little easement lane. Now, there will be a light. There is a light there, obviously.
Yeah.
But you can turn right on red and go into that easement area, I guess, and then get into traffic on going south on 31, correct?
Yeah,
That's what it looks like.
yeah. All the intersections that come up and hit 31, you're going to be able to turn right and go that direction. It's just most times you can't turn left from those roads, yeah. Yeah, double left there, so you see. Yeah, so we are adding that capacity. You guys, I mean, this is the direction I come into town, so I know that backs up a lot. And so this is to try to help that. And then our signal timing helps that as well. If you think about what happens is that a certain intersection has to have green time for all phases. If we take some of those away, which is those left turns, the other phases gain some of that green time. We spread it out where it's needed. So that will help, but then also the double left turn lane, right now that's a bottleneck all the time.
Trent, I understand this is an NDOT project generally speaking, but as our local representative, and me personally in city court with truck enforcement case, are we able to sign somewhere out there to designate where the trucks are not permitted? Because right now, they're on the roadway sides as opposed to being above.
Yeah, we have some bigger signs that are cantilever signs above.
Yeah.
So,
So is that
and they
something
will
that
be
could be done?
directing where, because some of these loons, that are right down in the downtown area are cars only, because we don't have enough room to make a bigger one. So a truck's got to go a little further to make a turn. I think there's only two occasions like that, but you'll see that as we go north on this sheet.
But the signage would be critical, I think.
Signage is going to be critical, and
We've talked about this many times, and with Mark as well. But right there coming off of 31, where they turn to come into the city, that's where we need to make sure there's big sign that says no trucks downtown or whatever, so,
Because they
Right.
get stuck a lot
yeah.
okay.
downtown.
Yeah, that might be something we need to coordinate. I don't know if there are current signs in the same.
There
location,
aren't, not above.
But they're not above.
They're on the sides.
Right. So, yeah, I think that's something we can address.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is the downtown area. There's King Street, I think. So just north. And then moving, yeah, so King and Adams. So you can see we've got walks, but we're very tight in that area, so they're right up against the roadway. But again, we do have walks or paths on both sides of the road. The white color is concrete, and the asphalt color on the top side of the sheet is the path. That'd be on the west side. So as we continue north, there's a bigger loon that trucks can turn there at Banta. And there's one, that one would be, I believe, for Mallory. If you're coming south, that'd be the one you'd be turned. We'll see it here as we come up. Yeah, so for Mallory, people coming that want to turn left, let's say on the top side, so eastbound on Mallory, you can't turn left, so you go down and use that loon. But you can see, again, we have a crossing. Most of these ped crossings are like this. They're catty corner. And so they have that refuge in the middle. Okay. Again, Mallory had left turns, so I think the next one would probably be, the major would be Commerce. Oh, sorry, yeah, North Main. And so there's another loon. Basically, the loons are on either side of every major intersection. So they're not for the minor streets, but all the majors, which is kind of the ones that I went through earlier. So, King and Adams, Lemley, those are not considered major intersections. There we go, North Main Street and Westview. So there's, again, they look a little different, but again, those are allowed left turns. That concrete area that you see shaded in the middle of the intersection, that is it'll look like grass because it's like concrete blocks that you put soil in and grass grows through it. You see it on creek banks sometimes for stabilization. Basically, what that allows is a fire engine or other emergency to go ahead and cross it, but it won't look like you're supposed to for a residential car. Two right turn lanes on North Main Street, 2 right turn lanes on Westview. And we are keeping, you can kind of see there's a really big radius on Westview. on the other side. And that's for a reason you've dealt with for a long time, that issue there, so. Okay?
Hey, Trent, do you want to mention the signal preemption?
Yeah, and that's something that the city got funding to do preemption signals, actually kind of concurrently or before we got moving with this project, and they're going to be added to this has a lot more signals than what the current situation has, so preemption will be added to all the new signals as well. Move from the existing ones and then added for the new ones, right? Yeah, as part of the project. So City of Franklin working with NDOT to make sure that happens with this project.
And for those that don't know, you may tell them what the preemption is.
Yeah, so preemption is just, they have switches in emergency vehicles to flip those and tell the signals that you want it to be green for the emergency vehicles. So it switches the signal so that they can control it and stop the other traffic from other directions and get through intersections faster than what they used to be able to do. So some more minor intersections here, and you can see, now that, again, these are smaller turns, so, but you can see the median's bigger there. So the outside loon's not as big, but the turning radius is still big enough for a semi because of the wider median. It's those loons get a lot bigger in the downtown area because you don't have any median that helps you with that turning radius. There's Simon Road, which is already cut off, and as it should be. It will continue to have no left turns there. And so then the next one north should be Commerce now. So there's Commerce, and Commerce is the other one where through traffic is allowed. So as you can see, you kind of have some chutes there to go through on that intersection. No left turns, but through traffic's allowed.
Takes some getting used to.
So much of the same.
Like the where we are now.
There's an industrial drive left turn allowed there that's signalized. Brannigan, this is the one for the buses, obviously heading to the high school. So you'll notice as she goes to the right, there's a big turn lane there, and then the left turn lane on this next one, look how long it is, and it's to accommodate buses platooning on that signal, and the signal will be timed for that as well. Yeah, and I don't know if you need to zoom in on these, Krista, but these last two boards, we get kind of more of a rural area, but that's Earlywood there. So again, left turns. And then you can see your U-turn movements north and south of there and of Sloan there. Is that Paul Hand? I think that's Paul Hand. So here we have paths on both sides. You see by the coloring, those are where we have the room, we have a wider path and it's asphalt. So again, so much more pedestrian connectivity, and you've got a lot of development happening on the north end of town in that area towards your city limits that now are going to have that pedestrian connection down into all the amenities that are on 31 that they don't have right now. So that's going to be a great asset that otherwise without this project would take decades to get done because the developers would build their section and then there'd be gaps. Oh, sorry, there's Paul Hand, yeah. And then the last board here. So that's international? But yeah, it's the very north end. So we basically go all the way from city limits to city limits. The city is partnering with NDOT in the project for some landscaping improvements and some, to try to dress up the city signs at the two ends. So we haven't, we're entering that part of the project where we're starting to work on those details. Christian Boulevard, sorry, in Oakville. But, so there will be some of those details. The lights are gonna, there's gonna be bollard lights for the paths and walks, but then there's also gonna be, so there's like 300 of those, I mean, there's a ton of them. And then there's also street lights that match your street lights, look like the decorative street lights. The signals will be mostly on strain poles. So what used to be on Jefferson Street or what you see on 31, which is the cables and the signals hang on those. But we are going to have them painted black. And so they are going to be a little bit more of a decorative look. But they won't be the cantilever style that you have here in downtown. So those are some good things that I think that NDOT's been good about working with you to find a middle ground. You know, they're not in the business of replacing cantilever signals when there's this many, but they are agreeable to, you know, painting them so that they do kind of match in with the rest of it. And then the light poles are your style. So it's really going to be a transformation of what it's going to look like. It's going to look a lot more like Franklin and the rest of your streets as far as the features than it will 31 anymore. And I think that's a win for the city and for the state and for NDOT. You know, most of these projects that they've done of these kind of nature, you go through and drive them now after they're done, they look totally renewed, you know, newer look. They do some, you know, they've been good about communities putting some recognition of the community at overpasses and those kind of things. You've seen that throughout the state, and I think you're going to see a lot of those differences on this project as well. So I think our key focus right now is a lot of education. And so one of the things we're trying to do is go into boards like this, because you will talk to people in the community and you'll get questions, and you'll get people who maybe have a wrong conclusion of what the project really is doing. And that's where we want to try to get the word out to say, you know, no, here's what it really is, or here's where you can go and get more information about it. We will be putting on NDOT Facebook, which I'm sure will get shared through the city Facebook, a lot of these documents and answers to these questions over the months that come. The project is now scheduled to let in September of 23, so less than a year from now. In the meantime, there's going to still be a lot of work out there. You're going to start seeing utilities being moved and some other work to prep for that. So there will definitely be work starting in 23, but the meat of the work you'll start seeing in the spring of 24, or maybe the winter of 24. So, yeah, and then the project is scheduled to go through 2026 and possibly could go into 2027, because it's 6 different phases. Just to not, you know, cripple the whole corridor. We're, you know, biting it off in sections, mostly from the south going north. We are doing a new structure at Canary right off the bat. We're doing some widening there and trying to get that out of the way. But then we will jump to the south, basically, and head north in phases. So happy to answer any questions, not just tonight, but at any time, or if you're affiliated with a board that you think there's a lot of, you know, negative connotations about the project, I'd be happy to come present. I've told the mayor that virtually my offer to come and talk to places is unlimited. I really want to see this project a success for everybody, and I think a lot of that really is going to count on proper education and getting people to understand the good things about this project. And get our focus off of the negative.
So originally, we were talking, just to clarify, we were talking next spring, maybe start on the Canary Ditch, but it's going to be put off a little bit, correct?
Yeah, that's pretty new news. When I presented this to the RDC, that wasn't news yet. But there are a lot of risk factors. When we started on this project, NDOT asked us to escalate it by a year, and then they asked us to escalate it by another 3/4 of a year. And we've said, yes, we're going to work hard to do that, but there are going to be issues with that and risk with that. And some of that could be if you go to bid too early and you have a lot of unknowns with utility relocations or right-of-way, that the bidders won't feel comfortable bidding it and get good bids. And I think that's where it's come down to that realization that maybe there's too much risk for a spring bid, but a very manageable risk in September. And we're in good shape with all of our permits and utility coordination and right-of-way. We felt confident. That's the date that we gave them when they asked, what date would you feel confident with less risk for us? And we said fall of '23. The spring letting was always going to be with a lot of risk, and we've been saying that since 3 years ago. And I think it just finally came to the realization that they weren't maybe ready for that much risk.
And one more question that we all hear a lot. There will be open traffic, a lane will be open north and south through the whole project.
Yes, yeah. And it's actually a project that sets itself up pretty well to build under traffic because the 2 lanes that you see in each direction are really the 2 lanes that are out there today. We're taking away right turn or left turn lanes. We're adding them in other places. That we're adding some curbs. So the median now is a sunken median with drainage. We're going to curb it. And all the drainage is going to the outside now, but it's all being, caught into curbs because that curb protects that pedestrian way. So even where there's ditches that we're keeping, like at the north end where it's rural, they're still going to be curbed to catch that drainage and to protect the pedestrians. But then it'll go, in pipes into those ditches. So it's going to, like I said, it's going to look a lot different, but it is very buildable under the current traffic because of the fact that we're basically building on the same 2 lanes. And for the most part, they did an overlay out there, right? Not that long ago. And so we are doing an overlay on that of those 2 lanes and then building these new lanes, but we're not rebuilding the entire roadway. So it should make it go a lot faster too in each of the phases. I know it won't feel like fast as 3 or 4 years, but it's a big project. It's over 5 miles.
And the price tag so far is?
Yeah, in the $40 million, I think is where, I don't remember if I gave you something more recent than that, but I think the last published one is about 40 million, and I think we're, looking at that from the standpoint of what's happened this year in pricing, and so I imagine that's on the low end.
Thank you, Trent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm sure there'll be more.
So Trent, you're doing Monday night at the school, correct?
Monday night at the school, presenting this, and then also presenting, and I'm going to try not to take up as much as their time. Sorry about all the time I took of yours, but they did ask me to a quick overview of the project, but then focus on their intersections that they're most concerned about. So it'd be Mallory and Brannigan, and then we're also presenting the roundabout. Okay, and they have once again. At least administratively, they have graciously accepted to donate right away, not just for your roundabout project, but for this NDOT project. So that they've, as long as I've been around, they've always been a great partner.
Okay, and you may or may not know, the Mayor's Youth Council is also going to be there to present with their art in the center of the roundabout. So
yeah,
you may want to touch base with them at some point.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I guess with that, we'll go on to item number 2, which is an item that we can take action on tonight. Common Council Budgetary Resolution number 22-11, authorizing a transfer from the Fire Department Supplies 200 to Fire Department Capital 400 in the amount of $29,700. Fire Chief Matt Call.
So pretty much just what he said. I would like to transfer appropriated money, so it's not new money, from the 200 series to the 400 series. and we're just gonna buy some new equipment a lot quicker than we thought we could, so.
For members of the public, we do a lot of transfers at the end of the year, not spending any more money, we're just moving it from one fund to the other. So it's pretty common this time of the year.
And we did, at the Board of Works tonight, approve to buy the equipment pending that the council moves the money. So we're ready for action at that point, or questions for Matt, whatever you want to do.
If there's no questions, I'll make a motion to approve Common Council Budgetary Resolution 22-11.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Okay, going on to item number 3, Common Council Budgetary Resolution number 22-12, authorizing a transfer from the clerk treasurer 300 services to clerk treasurer 200 supplies in amount of $500. Clerk treasurer Jane Rhodes.
Yes, same as Matt, but I'm not buying fire equipment. But it's just time to move some money to be able to buy some more supplies.
Move to approve council.
Second. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ann, finish your.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Move to approve council budgetary resolution 22-12.
Second.
Good job, Sean. Okay, we have a motion and a second. The second is by Sean Taylor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we will go on to the next item.
good.
Request approval of the 2023 holiday and Board of Works and City Council meeting dates. Again, on some of the city council, you see that some of them's on a Wednesday, a few, we got one Tuesday, couple Wednesdays, 3 Wednesdays, 2 Tuesdays, the rest of them are Mondays, and that's because of the holidays, the way they fall. And then on the holiday schedule, it's the same amount of holidays. We did, because of the way it fell for New Year's Eve, we're only going to observe New Year's Day, which New Year's Day is on a Sunday this year, and we're going to observe Monday as New Year's Day. And then the 4th of July, July the 3rd and the 4th, that is where we're going to observe the 3rd, which we usually do not. But since we're not using January or New Year's Eve, that's why we got the same amount of holidays. So, and in the department head meeting today, all the department leaders told me they would rather take the day off in the summer instead of in the winter anyway. So, but it may change next year back to the New Year's Eve thing. So anyway, it's presented, and I think we need your approval.
If there's no questions, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Price. Is that right? Yeah, okay. That's your first second, isn't it?
It's my first, anything.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will go on to the next item. Overview of the crisis management mental health with Karen Schaefer, Police Chief, and Police Chief Kirby Cochran. If you remember, a year ago, we added in our budget a crisis management mental health official. Ms. Karen Schaefer was the person that was hired. And as we were going through our budget this year, I was asked, Ann and I was actually talking about it, and Ann asked if we could have Karen come and kind of give us an oversight of what her job is and how it's helped our community, and I think that's a very good idea, and I will tell you that Karen has wanted to do this for some time. So Karen, if you don't mind, if you could come up and give us a little oversight, we appreciate it.
Okay, so I appreciate you guys asking me to come. I've got a few handouts, just because I think sometimes that's easier. The first one is last year's report, and I try to document things so it shows how well we're doing and what we're doing. And then I've got a report that is where I'm at currently. It's just a couple of graphs. And then I've got a list of sort of things that I keep, that I'm working on, meeting with. So I'll give you guys those, and then we can talk about them. So the report for last year, what I do is, essentially my job is to try to prevent law enforcement from going out on non-criminal activities. So if it is mental health, if it, even sometimes criminal activity, if it's drug abuse, we know that that has mental health issues with it, domestic violence. So the idea behind my role is to really figure out how we get folks in treatment and avoid the legal system for those folks and decrease law enforcement runs on non-criminal activities, or at least avoid criminal activities. So what I typically do when I get a referral is I go back 6 months prior to that referral, and I calculate how many law enforcement runs for that particular person. I give myself, and I'll be honest, I made this up, so I give myself 2 months to try to engage with the person and get them involved in services. After that 2 months, then I monitor 6 months post that intervention time and calculate how many law enforcement runs have been out to the house since then. So the idea is that if we intervene with these folks and get them involved in services, we'll decrease the law enforcement runs to that place. So in the first report, I also calculate how many folks, how many referrals I get. So the first year, I got 173 referrals for the year. Out of that 173, on the other page, it talks about how many engaged. I had 63% of engagement of those referrals. And those 63% are the ones that I measure the post law enforcement runs. So out of those 63 that engaged, we decreased law enforcement runs by 75% for those individuals. So intervening with them is making a difference, is decreasing law enforcement runs. I've also got several what I consider to be success stories, not using anybody's names, obviously, but I also attached their pre and post law enforcement runs. Some of them, honestly, if you look at one, actually increased by 3. We had 3 more calls after the intervention. But I will tell you, that's a person that it was a struggle, and he was a person that was talking suicide by cop. He lived with his mom. He had threatened her with a gun. And so even though that number went up, at this stage, he's not had any law enforcement involvement. He's involved with the Bowen Center Mental Health Center. He is on a monthly injection. His mom has guardianship, and he doesn't always enjoy going and get this shot, and sometimes it is a struggle. But between myself and his Bowen Center worker, we usually can convince him to do that. So we have had no further law enforcement runs with him, and he's consistently on the injection. So some of the things then on the next one, I'm trying to talk fast because I don't know how long you guys are going to let me talk. I could talk for days. The next one is my current situation. So currently, I'm sitting at about 126. I think I've got 3 or 4 that I haven't logged yet, so I'm probably around 130 currently. And I also monitor underneath there what the referrals are. I usually log them in, so obviously the majority are mental health calls, but there are some others out there as well. So far to date, I have engaged 68% of folks have engaged with me. Now, again, that's at 113 currently what it shows. So there's some that I haven't logged yet, or I haven't given up trying to engage with them yet. So it's not exactly apples to oranges at this point. But and the ones that I've met with or tried to meet with, 68% have engaged to date. And out of that, again, it's not, the numbers aren't high at this point, but we've decreased by 69% in the ones post intervention so far this year. So then the last page is really sort of things that I've been doing. I think for me, the biggest thing that I've kind of started is what we call the Village Group. Village people, for you people old enough to remember that. And so it really does take a village, and we've got probably a good 30 resource and other providers that come to a monthly meeting. We started out the first year and a half or so really just learning the providers that were around. I worked for 13 years for DCS in Johnson County, and so many providers, I had no clue even were in this community. And so it was really just pulling in a lot of those resources. Hey, what do you do? What do we do? How can we all work together? Nobody's going out of business in this job. So everybody really needs to work together and say, hey, I can't do that, but I know this other place can do that. And everybody shared the wealth on those services. It's been a great experience. We just had, a few weeks ago, a strategic planning meeting where we really, what I always wanted that group to be was more solution-focused. And so next year, we're going to try to be more solution-focused. And so we had strategic planning to kind of figure out what are the areas that are most needed and what are the things that we actually have a shot of making a difference in. And sort of the number one thing that we came up with was housing. So that is going to be on the agenda for my monthly meetings next year, is how do we approach housing? What do we do with that? And some of the ideas that we've come up off top of our heads, we're really getting together with local landlords that have the ability to make decisions to rent to people who have evictions on their record, rent to people who have convictions on their records that normally would be denied. Another thing, I started working with Northwood Apartment Complex. They have a social worker there. Didn't even know they had a social worker there. We're going to work with her and try to figure out, because I can't build new low-income housing, but what if we put enough resources in what we've got that we can move folks into independence and then free up those spaces? Right now, Northwood says they probably only have one vacancy every 6 months. That's not moving folks fast enough for the demand. So if we can look at that and say, how do we get enough resources in there for those folks who want to move on to become independent? How do we do that and then free up some of those space? So it's really kind of a pilot model there to see what we can accomplish with that. But the Village Group is really, for me, a great success, and everybody coming together, and everybody kind of worked in their own little bubble of services, and it's just been such a great resource that we can send something out and say, I've hit a brick wall with this client, here's what I need, and everybody on there is responding and working together, and how do we serve the client the best. So that piece has been amazing. We've worked with IDs. Vala Vista is working with us to actually accept IDs from our officers, which is a new thing, which will give them an additional place to take folks, a local place with a good relationship, trying to work with Community North, because a big key that we're missing is when folks go in the hospital, they absolutely make them appointments for follow-up, but nobody's there to make sure that they follow up. So I'm trying to work with them so that they notify me if they live in Franklin. I'll go to their house, I'll pick them up, I'll take them to the appointment, however that, make that a more of a warm handoff between two entities. Because right now, if they don't go, nobody's there to follow up. They even had folks that get on a temporary court commitment when they're in Community North. And if they don't make that appointment and there's no mental health center that accepts that until they see them, 90 days, nobody makes a report and that court commitment goes away. So I think there's a lot of holes in the system currently that we're aware of, and we're trying to kind of figure out how we fill those with other resources and just doing things differently. So work on the overdose fatality committee. We meet on a monthly basis reviewing overdose fatalities, and the whole purpose of that is really to figure out what steps were missed, where we could have intervened that we didn't, and how do we do it differently in the future. I did a training for the next of kin training, so part of that is going to be I'm going to go out, try to talk to family members, get their side of things and where they think the system failed and where it missed and what could have been done differently. Doesn't help their particular situation, but moving forward, how do we prevent that in the future? So that's another big piece that I'm working on. Again, I could go on and on, but that's kind of the nutshell of what I've been doing and how we've been doing.
Karen, it's a loaded question because you and I have talked on a couple of occasions, but have our employees and/or officers within the department been able to utilize you as a resource, maybe not just for themselves personally, because sometimes they see some difficult situations?
I will say I have had folks come in. I am not a therapist. And Chief and I talked about that. I think the dog must have
You got the
go
dog
out.
outside. Yeah, the dog left.
And so we talked about that when hiring me, and my office is right outside of where everybody sits. And I'm not sure that many officers are going to come in my office and divulge a lot of information and then see me out talking with other officers, and I think it's kind of an odd setup for that. They certainly do come in, they vent, they shut my door. I've given some of them resources to other places. I've had multiple officers and staff come to me. I've got a cousin, I've got an aunt, I've got this that needs some resources, and connected them with those resources.
And you've worked closely with the courts, I know, as a practical matter.
Yes, I actually have. Guardianship is a big thing for me. I think we need to figure out how to put a little more meat behind the guardianships that we have. I've talked to Judge Barton quite a bit. We got to figure out what to do with these adults that are chronically mentally ill and refuse treatment, and guardianship may be a little bit of that answer to do that. He's been willing to at least hear me out, entertain me on some of that. My hope was that we could look at, say, the person that was, his mom got guardianship and he was a suicide by cop person. He's on an injection. If he refuses to get his injection, then I'm going to at least take that before Judge Barton to request that he order him into somewhere to get that injection under the guardianship's wishes. I haven't played that out yet, so that's just how it's working in my head, but that's at least, he's at least willing to entertain that, which I'll take as a victory. I just set up, I've got another lady who's chronically mentally ill. So many law enforcement runs in and out of jail, in and out of the hospital. She's currently in jail now. She pled guilty. It was meth charges. She had a sentencing hearing. I spoke with her attorney. He had me come to court. We asked if the judge would consider releasing her into treatment. Holding her in jail is not the answer for somebody who's mentally ill. There's no treatment in there for seriously mentally ill folks. And so he has entertained it with me. She was supposed to, at 5 o'clock tonight, have a medication evaluation through Bowen Center while she's in jail. If we can get her on medicine, she's going to go to Hickory for 30 days treatment, and then 30 days in transitional housing, and then we'll work on it from there. So next Monday, I'll find out if the judge allows us to do that. So it's just trying to figure out new ways to sort of work with some of these folks that the typical ways are not working.
Thanks.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to talk today for days about it, you can call me.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
You do a great job, and I appreciate it. It makes a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there isn't any other business, so that gets us to council member comments, and I will go with Mr. Austin, Council President.
Thanks to the street department with all the leaves, pickup. It's been amazing the job that those guys and gals do, so appreciate their efforts.
Thank you, Kenny. Ann?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. Jennifer?
Oh, I have two things. It was nice to attend the fire truck dedication last week. And then I also visited the downtown holiday market this weekend, and it was nice to see downtown Franklin flourishing.
Okay, thank you. Josh?
No, nothing tonight.
Nothing? Sean?
Nothing nicer.
Okay, and Maggie? Would you introduce the other Mayor's Youth Council people that are here and give us a little update?
Hi, my name is Shelby Gill.
Shelby, I'm sorry.
It's fine, it's fine.
Twice, I did that twice. I'll admit it.
I'm here with Callie Cadwell and Morgan Harvey. As we talked about, we are currently working on the artwork in the middle of the roundabout that is going to be at the high school, and we are going to present that at the next school board meeting. We are also getting ready for a bake sale at the Winter Market. And we are also planning on, I know, sponsoring at least one child, possibly two, for Christmas Angels.
Nice.
That's good.
Okay,
stuff.
Thank you. Jane? Ms. Gray?
Yes, I know it's been a long meeting, so I will try to be direct, but this goes in the category of informational purposes for you. As you know, the city of Franklin, for years and years and years, has had what we call a buffer zone. The legal term for it is extraterritorial jurisdiction. And what that means is that with a radius outside our corporate city limits, we would exercise zoning jurisdiction even though the residents are technically county residents. In 2019, the legislature changed the law, and it allowed for the counties to take those buffer zones back. And they could do it without our input or any input whatsoever, or any cooperation. Our county, fortunately, in working with us, and Joanna has a fantastic relationship with the county planning director, our county has never wanted to do that kind of heavy-handed, we're taking it back, you can't have any cooperation. So we've continued to have the buffer zone and exercise jurisdiction in it. That creates a few administrative problems for a lot of citizens in the area because they buy property thinking they're in the county, and then when they have to go pull a permit, they have to go to the city. Maybe their realtor or their advisor has told them, oh, you're in the county, this is what you have to look at their rules and regulations. Then they find out, well, but then you get sent over to the city, and it's somewhat cumbersome. It is certainly a lot of administrative work for our staff to do that. At the suggestion of the mayor and with the staff's consent, we have gone back to the county and said, if you would like to now take the buffer zone back, now is probably a good time cooperatively for us to do that. The impact to us really is not that great at this point, if at all, quite frankly, because we've annexed most of the major developments that we want to annex into the city at this point. We don't do hostile annexations, as you all know. So if anybody wants to come into the city, they are continue to be free to do that. So people come to us and say annex it into the city. The buffer zone doesn't change that. And large developments usually will come to us because they're going to need the infrastructure such as the sewer and the water and those kind of things. So it's not going to stop any of those developments from happening. What it probably does is it makes it a little easier for somebody who wants to put a mini barn on their 3 acres out in the county, and they're in a buffer zone for us. So we have met with the county. I anticipate in the next month they will pass an ordinance to take back the buffer zone from us. It is a cooperative kind of thing. It's not, they want to make it very clear that they weren't doing it in a hostile manner, but we did consent to it and suggest that they go ahead and do it. It's just going to make it better for the citizens that are involved. So with that, if I'll be available to answer any questions, but I didn't want you to see it in the newspaper and think that we were at war with the county. We are not. We are working together with them.
And one misconception is that some people think that if, and you've hit on it, that if you're not in the buffer zone, you can't be annexed. Well, that has nothing to do.
Absolutely nothing.
With nothing,
That's
quite
correct.
honestly. So-
It's correct. It's correct. It's really outlived its usefulness at this point in time. It used to be a way that municipalities could protect themselves around the borders, but it's really no longer, that's not what it does anymore. The large developments still come to us because we have the infrastructure. We have the sewers, we have the water. They come to us.
And for a good example, the subdivision that's south of Franklin that's in the county, what is that subdivision? I forget the name, but anyway, that subdivision right there is in the county, and we get calls all the time about, you won't pick up these leaves, and they're putting them out in the street. We have no jurisdiction, although they're in our buffer zone, and we have to keep answering those questions, and it was just a good opportunity to, no, that's the county. You deal with the county.
Yeah.
So,
It's outlived its purpose,
Yeah.
its usefulness at this point.
Okay.
Yep. So they'll be doing it. Doesn't require us to do anything, but I wanted you to be aware. Thank you.
And I can be quite winded and talk all night too, so I'll shut up and don't have anything to say, and we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.